I just looked at my receipt for my Uber in Chicago. Let me show you all the freaking tax that Chicago charged on top of just the base rate of my Uber. So just for the privilege of taking an Uber in Chicago, here are all the additional taxes I had to pay. A Chicago ground transportation surcharge, Chicago accessibility surcharge, Chicago TMP administrative surcharge. All of these little fees they're charging on top of my small little Uber. Chicago always finds a way to stack taxes. This is what it looks like to be a Chicago citizen. Stacked taxes. So even if you think you don't need to be involved in politics, Chicago's mismanagement of their fiscal responsibility to their citizens, it touches everybody. You're not exempt. Every single thing you do in this city is impacted by their lack of ability to actually run this city effectively. And all they want to do is literally milk people for every drop of money that they have.
Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson unveiled his 2026 budget plan today. Now, the gap in that budget is bigger than first thought. It is more than $1 billion. Now, the mayor promises no property tax hike and no grocery tax. So where is he going to find the money to plug that hole? Our political reporter, Marianne Ahern, is here now with the details. Marianne.
Good afternoon, Alex. A key part of the mayor's budget proposal is a corporate head tax. That is a tax on the biggest companies in the city based on how many employees they have. It's something the city got rid of more than a decade ago, but now the mayor wants to bring it back, and already it's proving to be a tough sell.
And then finally eliminating the head tax.
Getting rid of the corporate head tax was a cornerstone of Rahm Emanuel's first mayoral campaign. Mayor Brandon Johnson's 2026 budget proposal would not only revive, but steeply increase the tax on big companies. He's pitching it as a way to fund community safety.
And so we are asking big tech to chip in. We are asking corporate landlords and yacht owners to chip in, but we are also asking the larger corporations to step up in this moment.
The tax would apply to companies with at least 100 employees, about 3% of corporations in Chicago. They would have to pay $21 per employee each month. It's drawing criticism from business leaders and aldermen concerned about jobs.
In 2018 in Seattle, they passed this a similar type thing, and it was repealed less than a month later because of similar concerns. So I suspect that is not going anywhere.
Boy. So once again, we got to talk about woke Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, who's on the hot seat because his city once again is facing a budget crisis. This time, Chicago is facing a projected budget shortfall of around $1.1 billion for fiscal year 2026. Now, this is despite the fact that spending has surged in recent years. You're talking about expenditures growing 62% from 2019 to the present, and revenues also being high. So what you have here is a spending problem, right? You don't have a revenue problem, you have a spending problem. But progressives believe that the only solution to any problem, right, when you talk about a budget is to raise taxes, okay? And woke Mayor Brandon Johnson has been desperate to raise taxes on people. Like, for example, when he tried to raise property taxes on the city of Chicago last year, despite the fact that he campaigned against doing that. He promised he wouldn't do it just for him to turn around and do it because, again, all progressives know is, hey, let's tax, right? And now he has a new tax proposal that we got to talk about here, okay? A controversial tax proposal that likely is going to cause even more businesses to move out of Chicago because of the fact that this guy is obsessed with so-called progressive revenue, right? Progressive revenue, right? That is what Brandon Johnson is striving for, which again means taxing businesses out of existence. That's what Brandon Johnson is trying to do.
I guess, Mayor, we're all just waiting for you to be specific about what is progressive revenue.
I mean, Tamar, you know what progressive revenue is. Listen, the governor spent his own money for progressive income tax, of which 84% of black
folks.
folks.
Have that. We have a graduated income tax. There's
but your question was, Tamar, respectfully, your question was, what are the specifics? We know the specifics around progressive revenue. What did the Speaker of the House say? He said we should have a millionaire's tax. He said it. The state of Illinois fought for progressive income tax. I know they're looking at a digital ad tax. There's no secret around here of where the money is hyper concentrated. And as Democrats, we're either going to fold to Trump's cuts or we are going to roll him over. And I am saying that as working people, we have to roll over this Trump administration and ensure that we have the revenue to continue to hire people, to continue to educate our children, to continue to make sure that we have good paying jobs, to continue to make sure that we're protecting people's retirement, to make sure that our transportation system is running. The Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, they're recognizing the economic comeback of Chicago and how Trump's cuts are hurting that. I'm going to present a budget that challenges the ultra-rich to pay their fair share in taxes. I'm going to challenge that. Our corporations, particularly those who have received tax cuts from the president, have to put more skin in the game. Look, the president's cuts are real. He's cutting our public education system. He's cutting off our public transportation investments. He's literally withholding over $2 billion for the south side of Chicago. We fought 50 years to get that done. We got it done in my time as mayor. And now he's withholding those dollars. Every single area where descendants of slaves have fought for accommodations by the government, that's what he's attacking.
Yeah. So again, Chicago deserves this man, right? 100%. Because if you cannot see through the stupidity of progressive logic, like for example, what Brandon Johnson was just spewing there, where you talk about actual policy, I don't know what to tell you, right? Apparently, this guy thinks that corporations need to put more skin in the game because they receive tax cuts from the Trump administration, right? They receive tax cuts at the federal level. So that means that, hey, the city needs to come in and to tax those companies that just received a tax break, right? Basically nullifying the effect of the tax break. The effect of the tax break for the corporation is that they're going to be able to hire more people. They're going to be able to invest more in Chicago, right? Brandon Johnson claims that he wants jobs, right? You want jobs, you want the youth to be employed, right? Because apparently, according to this guy, in order to fight crime, you just need more money, right? It's just more money in the black community, right? Okay? You just need a job in order to fight crime. Well, if that's the case, why are you trying to tax companies so that they have less money to hire people? In fact, his new so-called head tax is literally a direct attack on employment, right? Where he's literally taxing companies for hiring people, right? It's called, again, a head tax. But according to this scammer, right, he's calling it the community safety surcharge. It is $21 per employee per month, okay, for large companies. And it's expected to generate about $100 million annually. But you're talking about $21 being charged per month, for basically hiring people, right? Having a large company, right? $21 a month. Okay, this is Brandon Johnson's genius plan. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
Doubling down on his calls for corporations and the wealthy to pay more, he repeatedly blamed the Trump administration for why the city needs a number of his progressive revenue proposals. He's now calling on the city council to get behind this plan and support it.
Hey. Good morning, Mayor. Good morning.
Mayor Brandon Johnson making the case for his proposed budget one day after he presented it to the city council, where it drew a mix of praise and skepticism. His corporate head tax that will be used to fund summer youth jobs and violence prevention programs would impact companies with more than 100 employees working in Chicago.
And so we believe this is a reasonable approach to generate revenue, to challenge our larger corporations to put more skin in the game, to ensure that we continue to make sure that our communities are driving violence down.
The business community blasted the plan along with other corporate taxes. Did you convene a meeting with labor to discuss savings and efficiency and burden sharing on their part?
Well, we did. Well, first of all, let me just say, the vast majority of our corporate fund is geared towards community safety and public safety as a whole. So what we're talking about is we either challenge our larger corporations to put a little bit more skin in the game, or we cut 1,500 officers from our budget.
The mayor's office clarifying that the corporate taxes prevent the need for any layoffs or a property tax hike at a time when Johnson says Trump's tax cuts are hurting working people.
We're talking about an additional $1,200 per year on average that working people will assume because of Donald Trump's cuts to the ultra rich.
What happens if these big companies have people work remotely or give them part-time work and cut down their numbers?
Well, look, I can't live in hypothetical. What I can say is that we're talking about a community safety fund that will strictly go to ensuring that the mental health and well-being of our police officers is secure.
Well, the majority of that is going for the summer youth jobs, half of it.
Hiring people is a part of our safety plan. In fact, this is why this budget is so critical, right? Because this budget protects us from Trump's cuts. This is what this is about.
Every politician.
Yeah, so again, this guy is such a swindler, right? He's such a scam artist. Well, see, we got to raise taxes because Trump cut taxes. So we got to raise taxes, right? Instead of, I don't know, cutting spending, right? The whole point of cutting taxes is so that people can decide what they want to do with their money, right? And what they want to do with their money is probably the best thing, right? The best use of the money rather than giving it to the government. But again, you have the local government of Chicago stepping in and saying because of Trump's tax cuts that these corporations need to pay more in taxes so that they can hire black teenagers, right? So that the government can provide, quote unquote, jobs for black teenagers. Now, the problem with this logic is that when you're taxing these corporations for hiring people, literally for having employees, you're disincentivizing hiring. That's what you're doing. So it doesn't matter if the government decides to take the money and then to hire teenagers to do jobs that probably aren't very important, right? It doesn't matter. That's actually just going to be worse for the city overall, worse for the economy overall, because corporate America, the actual, real producing jobs, they're not going to be hiring, right? They're going to be hiring less, okay? This is a classic redistribution scam. You're literally redistributing resources from corporations who hire people to produce real things and giving it to the government so that they can set it on fire, right? They can piss on it and give it to young black teenagers, right? Pretending as if giving them these government jobs is going to help them clean up crime. When that's certainly not the case. And on top of that, they're not producing a damn thing in the real economy. And you're, again, funding this by taking away money from the real economy, okay? Real corporations that actually really produce and giving it to the government to hire kids to do jobs that, again, don't really produce anything. Again, this is failed economic policy 101, right? This is a disaster, an absolute disaster. But hey, this is par for the course when it comes to progressive politics, okay? Especially when you talk about economics. These people really believe in rob Peter to pay Paul, right? That's what they believe in, okay? You got a bunch of idiots that fall for this stuff thinking that it works, and it does not work. Okay, it does not work. In Chicago, again, they're going to find out the hard way, right? This dude is going to run Chicago into the ground before he's out of office. Just like his haircut, right? Ran into the ground. That mohawk, again, there's a lot going on here, okay? That's how the city of Chicago is going to end up, right? Just like his haircut.
Is always looking ahead to the next election. This could be seen as giving the business community reason to rally around a challenger. Did you just hand potential challengers a gift with these taxes on businesses?
Here's what we've given. Here's what we've handed. We've handed the people of Chicago an opportunity to lead the charge.
Did you hand them an opportunity to elect someone else in 2027?
So look, I don't think about my reelection.
Your own budget director said the grocery tax would only cost the average Chicagoans $50 to $60 a year. Why not keep that in the budget and get that estimated $80 million?
Well, look, I mean, it goes back to what I said earlier, that this president has done such an awful job at managing the economic challenges of working people.
The mayor also defending his plan to sweep $1 billion in TIF funds, more than half of which would go to Chicago public schools. What do you say to those who might see this as a budget for CPS, a reward for your allies?
A TIF surplus goes to our city colleges. It goes to our parks. It goes to our libraries.
But the majority goes to CPS.
Well, because that's the way the law is designed.
Right.
And so investing in CPS, that's a good thing, right? And so what I'm simply
saying...
saying...
you're getting your buddies paid, right? For a failing job, by the way, right? These students can't read, can't write, can't do math, okay? But hey, let's keep funneling the money, right? Let's keep funding a failing system, right? But again, according to progressives, that's a great thing, right? Endless funding for failing systems. But again, it's designed that way because, when these people funnel money, right, into so-called violence prevention programs, right? As this interviewer laid out, a lot of that money is not going towards violence prevention. It's going towards these fake jobs that they're creating for black teenagers, right? That's not violence prevention. It's going to these liberal nonprofits who are ineffective. They don't do a damn thing, and they just continue to get the funding because they then turn around and use that funding to elect their friends who, you know, give them the funding back. And that's how it works, right? It's never designed to actually solve any problem. Because if you actually solve the problem, then there would be no need for all of these liberal nonprofits, right? So when you create as many problems as possible with progressive government, right, and then you funnel all the money to these nonprofits and they funnel the money back to the politicians, yeah, I mean, that's how the scam works, right? At your expense, okay, using your tax dollars. This is how they scam the American people, okay, in these liberal cities.
It is that I know that there are people who are thirsty to make it about the Chicago Teachers Union. They're short-sighted. They are short-sighted because the larger, bigger picture ensures that not just our public schools are fully supported at a time in which President Trump is attacking public education.
The mayor told me he's willing to compromise on the details of his proposal, but not the values it represents, namely corporations kick in more so working people don't have to. He called this his Protecting Chicago budget, and he said today that it's protecting them from Donald Trump.
Yeah, so again, at this point, Democrats can't push a damn thing. They can't stand on their own 2 feet without Trump, right? It always has to be, we're doing this because of Trump, right? You're using Trump to justify pushing your budget proposal, right? Clearly, your budget proposal is not going to be popular. Clearly, he's going to have a hard time pushing it through because otherwise you wouldn't have to come out here and to say, well, I'm doing this because of Trump, right? Look, man, if you want to tax the rich, just stand by it, right? If it's a good thing, if it's a great thing to tax corporations for hiring people, literally for hiring people, stick with that, my guy, right? You don't need to use Trump in order to justify if it's good policy, but it's not good policy. It's bad policy. It's just another redistribution scam from the government. It's not going to work. It's going to be a complete and total disaster. And again, Chicago is just going to have to find out the hard way, right? If woke man Brandon Johnson really wanted to save money and to actually get, you know, violence prevention happening in the city, right? If he actually wanted to do that, then he would work with the federal government, right? Because, I mean, the cheapest thing that the city can do is to work with ICE and to work, again, with federal law enforcement in order to crack down on crime. But he don't want to do that, right? That's the cheap option, right? If I was Chicago trying to save money, I'll be like, hey, yeah, feds, y'all come in. Go ahead and start deporting these illegals. Go ahead and start locking these criminals up. And, hey, you save us money, right? We can focus on other stuff. But, you know, Democrats choose to fight Trump instead, and we're going to see how that turns out. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.